Emily Harper was the kind of woman everyone admired, bright, kind, and beloved in her small town. Lena Conway was quiet, creative, and had vanished without a trace years earlier. They never met, never spoke, but their names would be forever linked by a chilling truth. Both were watched, both were warned, and both were found, one dead, the other never at all. What connected them wasn't who they were, but what they saw. And in this true crime mystery, what they saw may haunt you forever. Ash Grove was the kind of town where nothing ever really happened. Tucked away in the Appalachian Mountains, life moved slowly, predictably. People left their doors unlocked, and gossip traveled faster than any official news. That's why, on the morning of October 17, 2012, when Emily Harper didn't show up for work at Pinecrest Elementary, the entire town noticed almost immediately. Emily wasn't the type to miss school. She was punctual, responsible, and well-liked by her students and co-workers. Her absence sent a ripple of unease through the quiet community. Her closest neighbor, an elderly widow named Mrs. Lowry, grew especially concerned when she noticed Emily's car still parked in the driveway well past 8 a.m. The blinds were drawn, and there was no movement inside. After several unanswered knocks and a phone call that went straight to voicemail, Mrs. Lowry did what any good neighbor would do. She called the police. When officers arrived, they found the front door slightly ajar. There was no sign of forced entry, no smashed windows, no broken locks. The living room was neat. Emily's handbag was on the kitchen counter, her phone plugged into the wall charger. Her keys were by the door, exactly where she always left them. According to friends, nothing appeared to be stolen. There were no signs of a struggle, but then an officer noticed something strange. A faint trail of blood, barely visible, smeared along the wooden floorboards and leading to the basement door. With weapons drawn, the officers descended into the dimly lit basement. At the bottom of the stairs they found Emily. She was lying on her side, her wrists bound behind her back with silver duct tape. More tape covered her mouth. There were bruises on her neck. The coroner later confirmed she had been strangled to death sometime between midnight and 3 a.m. There were no defensive wounds suggesting she had been taken by surprise. Her body had been positioned deliberately, almost carefully, as though the killer had taken time afterward to stage the scene. But the most disturbing part wasn't the body. Pinned to the basement wall directly above Emily was a Polaroid photograph. It showed Emily herself, smiling, standing outside her home. The picture had been taken from a distance, likely through the trees that bordered the backyard. She looked unaware, maybe even happy, but the way the image was displayed, looming over her body, turned it into something grotesque. On the back of the photo, written in red ink, were two words: she knew. Detectives were baffled. There were no fingerprints on the photo or tape, no signs of forced entry, no DNA left behind. Whoever had done this had come and gone without leaving a trace. Even the camera type used to take the Polaroid was unusual. Older model, long out of production. Word of the murder spread through Ash Grove like wildfire. The town that had always felt safe was suddenly shrouded in fear. People double-locked their doors. Parents kept their kids home from school, and in the middle of it all, one question echoed louder than any other. What exactly had Emily known? The investigation into Emily Harper's murder quickly turned desperate. With no physical evidence and no clear suspects, detectives found themselves chasing shadows. Emily had no criminal record, no history of mental illness, and no known enemies. She lived alone, kept to herself, and spent most of her time either at school or volunteering at the local library. Her digital footprint was minimal. Her phone revealed nothing more than a few casual text messages and a half-finished grocery list. But something about that photograph disturbed everyone who saw it. It wasn't just the eerie angle or the fact that it had been taken without her knowledge, it was the message she knew. What could Emily have known that was worth killing her over? And why leave a clue behind if the killer went to such lengths to cover their tracks otherwise? As detectives retraced Emily's final days, a small but significant detail emerged. 6 months before her murder, Emily had reported a break-in. According to the police report, nothing had been stolen. No windows were broken, but Emily had told the responding officer that she'd woken up in the middle of the night and felt certain someone had been in the house. She couldn't prove it. There were no signs of forced entry then either. The officer chalked it up to stress or a bad dream and filed the report under no evidence of crime. The case had gone nowhere now, in the context of her murder. That report took on a different weight. Digging further, investigators started checking for similar incidents in the surrounding area and explained break-ins, women reporting strange occurrences, anything that felt off but had been dismissed. That's when they stumbled upon a police file from a neighboring town. filed nearly 2 years before Emily's death. The victim's name was Lena Conway. Lena had been 28, a freelance graphic designer who worked from home. She lived alone, kept mostly to herself. Much like Emily, her case was chillingly similar. One night, she vanished without a trace. Her front door was unlocked. Her keys and phone were inside. There was no sign of struggle. Friends had reported her missing after she failed to show up for a lunch meeting. Despite weeks of searching, Lena was never found. One detail in her file caught a detective's eye. A week before she disappeared, Lena had told her sister that she'd received a strange note in the mail. The note read, "You saw too much." It was dismissed at the time as a possible prank or stalker scare, with no follow-up. But when Lena's sister was shown the back of the Polaroid found in Emily's basement, she froze. The handwriting was almost identical. Two women, from two different towns, years apart, both seemingly quiet, private, harmless, both gone, both warned, and now, it seemed, both connected. The eerie similarity in their cases sparked a grim realization. Emily's murder might not have been an isolated event. It might have been the continuation of something far more disturbing, something planned, precise, and still very much in motion. As the investigation widened, detectives began mapping out a timeline, hoping to find any connection between Emily Harper and Lena Conway. What they found was both unexpected and deeply unsettling. Though the two women had never met and lived in different towns, they had one shared thread: both had attended the same small liberal arts college in North Carolina. Not only that, they had taken the same art history elective in the fall of 2006. This wasn't an immediate red flag. The class had over 30 students, and neither woman had any reported issues during their time there. But as investigators dug further, more names surfaced: 3 more women, all former students in that same 2006 art history course, who had also vanished or reported strange experiences. One had gone missing in 2010 after a late-night shift. Another had filed a police report about being followed but was dismissed due to lack of evidence. The third was found dead in her apartment under suspicious circumstances, officially ruled as suicide, though her family had never believed it. The professor who taught that class was named James Cormack, a quiet, well-liked man in his early 40s. At the time, Cormack had taught at the university for over a decade, before suddenly leaving in 2008. Official records listed his resignation as personal, citing a need to care for a sick relative. But when detectives looked deeper, a more disturbing picture emerged. Just before his departure, Cormack's wife had filed a restraining order against him, citing emotional abuse and increasingly erratic behavior. 2 months later, he disappeared. No one had seen or heard from him since. This revelation shifted the focus of the entire case. James Cormack, once a respected professor, now became a prime suspect. Investigators theorized that he may have formed a fixation on certain students, perhaps those who reminded him of someone from his past or who simply caught his attention in ways no one else noticed. If Emily, Lena, and the others had somehow sensed something was wrong, perhaps even seen something they shouldn't have, that could explain the messages. She knew, "You saw too much." The FBI joined the case, combing through university records, archived emails, and faculty files. They interviewed former students, trying to piece together what Cormack might have been like behind closed doors. Some remembered him fondly. Others recalled a subtle, uneasy, uncomfortable gaze during lectures, cryptic comments about art and mortality. Still, none of it amounted to enough evidence for a warrant. Then, a tip came in. A former student claimed to have seen Cormack several years earlier, living in a remote part of West Virginia under a different name. The cabin was isolated, tucked away in the woods near an abandoned mining road. Armed with this information, federal agents secured a search warrant and moved in, hoping to finally confront the man they believed had orchestrated years of terror. But when they arrived, James Cormack was nowhere to be found. The cabin was empty. What they found inside, however, changed everything. The inside of the cabin was eerily quiet, cold, and bare, as if whoever had been staying there had left in a hurry or had never truly lived there at all. Dust coated most surfaces. There were no personal belongings, no clothing, no food. Yet, tucked away in a wooden chest near the back of the cabin, investigators found something chilling: dozens of Polaroid photographs, neatly arranged in folders, labeled only by first names and dates. Each photo followed the same unsettling pattern. Women, always taken from a distance, often through trees or windows, completely unaware they were being watched. Some showed the subjects walking to their cars, others captured them inside their homes, reading, cooking, or just sitting. All of them, it seemed, had been carefully surveilled for long periods. And among the women were faces. The agents recognized Emily, Harper, Lena Conway, and 2 of the other victims linked to the 2006 art class. But the photographs didn't stop there. There were women who hadn't yet been reported missing, whose names had never appeared in the investigation. Some of them were tracked over the course of weeks, even months, based on the changing dates written on the backs of the prints. Whoever had taken these images had a meticulous, methodical eye. It wasn't the behavior of someone lashing out randomly, it was organized, premeditated. And worst of all, some of the photos had notes written in the same distinctive handwriting that had appeared on Emily's Polaroid. She saw me, she remembers, and, in one case, she spoke. At first, everyone assumed these belonged to James Cormack, but something didn't add up. The cabin's lease was not under his name. It belonged to a man named Andrew Knox, a former police evidence technician who had quietly disappeared from public life after being dismissed from his department several years earlier. His reason for termination was never officially released, but internal memos cited mishandling of crime scene photographs and a pattern of increasingly suspicious behavior. Knox, it turned out, had also attended the same college in 2006. He wasn't on the class roster, but further digging revealed he had occasionally sat in on lectures for extra credit through a photography workshop. He had no prior criminal record, no known history of violence, but when confronted by the FBI, he didn't deny his connection to the photographs. In his confession, Knox claimed he hadn't killed anyone. He described himself not as a murderer, but as a watcher. He said the women had become targets because they had noticed something, sensed something that others didn't. When asked what that was, Knox wouldn't answer. He said the warnings on the photos weren't threats, they were protections. The notes, he insisted, were messages to keep the women safe from someone else. 3 days after his arrest, Andrew Knox was found dead in his jail cell. The cause, suicide by hanging. No note, no final words. But one final piece of evidence emerged that changed the direction of the investigation. Once more, a Polaroid found in his personal belongings. It showed Knox sitting alone at a diner, taken from outside the window, through glass. On the back was a message written in the same familiar handwriting. He knew to, with Andrew Knox dead and James Cormack still missing, the case grew colder. By the day, authorities had no new leads, no hard evidence tying either man directly to Emily Harper's murder or the other disappearances. The cabin had yielded disturbing material, but it raised more questions than answers. Who had taken the photos of Knox? If he was merely observing, then who was actually responsible for the killings? And if he was lying, why would someone photograph him in the same haunting style as his own victims? Despite pressure from the public and the families of the missing women, the investigation began to stall. Without a living suspect, no one could be charged. The FBI issued a national alert for James Cormack, citing him as a person of interest, but his trail had long gone cold. He hadn't used a credit card, filed a tax return, or renewed a driver's license in nearly a decade. If he was still alive, he was living completely off the grid. In a desperate attempt to uncover the truth, a team of investigators began re-examining all cases connected to the women from the 2006 class. One by one, they reached out to families, friends, and former classmates. They searched for any shared experiences, any specific incident that could tie the women to a motive. Slowly, a subtle theme began to emerge. During their college years, several of the women had been part of a student-led project that involved collecting anonymous confessions from fellow students and displaying them publicly as an art piece. The confessions were written, submitted secretly, and posted around campus as part of a temporary installation called The Eyes That See. The installation was only up for 3 days before it was taken down. Some of the confessions were harmless, even humorous. Others were dark, hinting at abuse, shame, and secrets never meant to be seen. It was whispered that one of the confessions had accused a faculty member of inappropriate behavior. That specific one had been removed quickly, and no official record of it remained, but investigators believed that one confession, possibly written by a student or someone pretending to be one, had exposed something or someone, and maybe the women involved in creating the installation had unknowingly seen more than they realized. It was only speculation, but it was the only potential motive that tied all the victims together. Years passed, and still, no one came forward. The missing women were never found. No new photos appeared. The trail faded into the fog of forgotten cold cases. The media moved on, and Ashgrove tried to return to normal, but the people closest to the case never stopped watching their backs. Then, in 2022, a young woman attending the same college discovered a Polaroid tucked inside a campus library book. It showed her sitting outside on the grass, headphones in, reading. On the back were 2 words, "You're next." The book had last been checked out in 2006. And just like that, the chain began again.